We've got details of these and many more coming up in the next 20 minutes if you spend your time with me. Remember, we're live on DSTV channel 279. Let's begin from here. Doctors at the Kumasi Teaching Hospital have declared a strike effective immediately to express dissatisfaction with their imminent eviction from the official residence at Denyame in Kumasi. The doctors, after an emergency meeting, unanimously agreed to lay down their tools until an alternative accommodation arrangement is made for them. Here's a report by our regional correspondent, Ibrahim Abubakar.
A statement issued by the Ashanti Regional Coordinating Council on May 2022 confirmed the release of portion of state lands at Denyame to the Asantini on behalf of and in trust for the subject of the Golden Stool. The revested land contains state bungalows to be relocated to the area retained by government. But the Ashanti Regional Coordinating Council's handling of the relocation process appears to have suffered a communication gap. Some doctors occupying the bungalows are not happy with the continuous eviction threats they receive from private developers without relocation arrangement. Fed up with the ceaseless eviction warnings, the Kumasi Teaching Hospital Doctors Association has resolved to lay down its tools and go search for accommodation. Dr. Michael Leet is the chairman of Cath Doctors Association.
Some of our doctors they've been given notices to evict their accommodation units within a week. Some have had their water supply cut off. Some have been walled in. So we thought it wise that if you are being evicted, then we meet and decide as a group what is the next step. And what came out, the unanimous decision was to lay down our tools tomorrow by 6 a.m. and then go and look for accommodation.
However, the Ashanti Regional Minister, Simon Osei-Mensah, has said new apartments are being built for the affected doctors, adding they are on an advanced stage of completion.
If I hear somebody say that we're giving him 1 week to vacate his bungalow or something, they should produce the letter so that we know the author of that letter, whoever wrote that letter to them. We want to know. And also we've had agreement with the contractors that before they move anybody, they have to rent a place for the person for a period of 2 years, by which time we will be sure we will be done with all the structures we are putting up.
But the doctors say they've not been communicated to on any relocation arrangement.
I've heard the regional minister on several stations making those claims. He claims there are places for. He should show us where those accommodation units are.
Persons who intend to seek medical care at Kumasi Teaching Hospital from Wednesday, March 13, may have to look elsewhere, as doctors may not be available at Cath to attend to them. The doctors say they will remain on strike until the accommodation issue is completely resolved. Ibrahim Abubakar, TV3 News, Kumasi.
Well, this is a development that interests us, and so we'll keep tap on it and surely give you updates in our subsequent bulletins, especially News Central. Now, the Supreme Court has been requested to restrain President Akufo-Addo from dismissing or removing the Inspector General of Police and other security chiefs unless such a process is carried out in accordance with the law. This is contained in the case filed by think tank Imani Africa and security analyst Kwesi Enin.
The think tank and the security analyst, through their lawyers, filed the 114-page writ at the Supreme Court with the hope of stopping what they say is a disturbing trend of such key officials being removed from office despite no evidence that they have misconducted themselves. They want the court to declare that the positions of Chief Fire Officer of the Fire Service, Inspector General of Police, Director General of Prison Service and Controller General of Immigration Service are sensitive positions that should not be toyed with. They believe such officials should be replaced only when they die, retire, resign, or are incapable of performing functions of the office by reason of infirmity of the body or mind, or that they are dismissed upon proving stated misconduct or misbehavior established against them. The court documents detail a tall list of officials they believe have been unlawfully removed from office. It includes Director General of Ghana Prison Service Emmanuel Yawa Jato, who was removed in 2017. Elizabeth Ejay, Comptroller General of Ghana Immigration Service, removed in 2011. They want the court to restrain or prevent the President of the Republic from dismissing current and future office holders unless the Constitution is complied with. It is not clear at this stage when hearing of the case will begin, because the Office of the Attorney General will have to be served first before the court would issue a hearing notice for hearing to begin.
Meanwhile, private legal practitioner Martin Kpigbu says his support calls for the removal of key heads of various security services to be balanced and not entirely left to the president. His call comes on the back of suit at the Supreme Court, asking the president to restrain the president from removing the Inspector General of Police and other security chiefs unless such a process is carried out in accordance with the law. The case was filed by think tank Imani Africa and security analyst Kosienin.
For security reasons, the president should still maintain that control. So the question we should be asking is, how much more have we embraced democracy since the Constitutional Review Commission completed its work over 10 years ago? Because that is a key matter we should be looking at. If you look at it, in 2022 alone, President Kufuor had to beg the military on 2 occasions. You can Google it, you see, asking them not to step in, not to do any coup d'etat. Even for the second one in October 2022, ex-President Mahama had to also join the call, asking the military to stay their hands, because that was the year we're suffering so much hardship. So coup d'etat here, coup d'etat there. Fast forward, last year, there were calls like that, people saying, look, we are suffering. So the question we should be asking ourselves is that, have we fully embraced democracy? If you hear, and even in November 2023, you hear Kandapa complaining that we are encouraging too much coup d'etat. So in one word, there are security implications that this will involve. It has to be balanced, because even though the police are not strictly speaking military, but they have a lot of weapons. They have a lot. So when you're saying, I support a situation where the IG will not be appointed by the president.
Martin Kpigbu is a private legal practitioner. In more news this morning, the minority in Parliament is threatening to resort to the IMF to compel managers of power sector to comply with conditionalities aimed at improving the sector. Speaking in Parliament, ranking member of the Energy Committee, John Jinapor, indicated that the return of Donsor is due to mismanagement and not an operational capacity of transformers. Take a listen.
On Monday, the ECG announced a surge in power outages during peak hours and attributed it to technical glitches, but the minority says that is not the case.
Yesterday's peak was 3,000 in terms of capacity. That's what they were able to generate. The demand was 3,543. So clearly there's a shortfall of 500. So if this happens, and ECG was shedding 450 megawatts, so this has nothing to do with so-called obsolete transformers. Transformers do not get overloaded overnight. It builds up.
He indicated that the IMF may have to intervene.
Let me assure you that I will take this up with the IMF, because it's an IMF conditionality that we must desist from piling up this debt. The Ministry of Finance brought a budget and made provision to pay for this shortfall, because MMDs, like the ministries, departments, the military, the police, the prison service, and all those allied agencies, the Ministry of Finance must pay on behalf of these agencies.
On the floor of the House, a lot of time today was devoted towards answering of questions by ministers of state, those who had questions to be answered from members of Parliament. For instance, the Minister for Roads and Highways said a number of questions on the country. And then the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources spoke about the work of Enoch Holdings and then Mr. Clemens Jato in protecting the lands or reclaiming lands across the country.
Yeah, Enoch Company Limited is not a vigilante group. It's not a land guard group. Mr. Speaker, they do not employ the services of land guards. They do not employ the services of land guards. They are not a vigilante. Mr. Speaker, and if the honorable member or anybody had evidence or had reason to believe that this company employs the service of land guards and vigilante groups, I think the right thing is to report it to the police for them to be dealt with, because that is a criminal act.
The House also paid tribute to the memory of the late MP for Bantama, Daniel Ochema-Boaje, who will be buried over the weekend. Chukman Sopoku, TV3 News, Parliament House, Accra.
Well, if you just tune in, you're watching the first news bulletin of the day on TV3 right here on New Day. In more news this morning, some victims of the PAT explosion are urging government to halt any plans to hand over new accommodation recently constructed. They say despite losing their homes, they have not been captured in the list of beneficiaries. Rama Smith has more.
Apiate is a community in the Pristia Huni Valley municipality of the Western region. On the 20th of January 2022, an explosion in the community claimed 17 lives, injured over 500 people, and destroyed the whole township, making it one of the worst explosion disasters to be recorded in the history of Ghana. The survivors were accommodated in temporary structures, whilst arrangements were made for permanent reconstruction of the whole township. But the people are not happy. This house belonging to a headmaster was not captured in the book. So where will he stay after they commission the buildings?
Obina Beroba, no brace ni dan. Dan ebubu si dan mano. Na hefa ma mi obukakoda. What's we read na wo commission dan no.
Chemical na ya humi egu ye mu no. Ye kra ye wa ha ne ye ni ahoto ye long time effect. Hwe kube kura esi ho kura no. Kube ni nyina ahwe. Kube ni nyina ahwe. Kube na nya ahwe na ya mu hwe.
We don't know much about the chemicals that exploded here. This coconut tree, which was flourishing, died suddenly after the explosion. How much more will the impact be on we humans? According to these aggrieved victims, failure to heed this warning will be met with the fierce resistance of a united community determined to hold those responsible accountable. They say their pursuit of justice will not be compromised, and they will persist until every victim is rightfully settled. Philip Kingsley Amponsa is a spokesperson for the aggrieved victims.
Ya womobe commission enipa ewe chiri omu wahai adobri bebre so omu granting interviews no kwa se mpenufo ni nwie adwuma no omu nwie si akoko area ho na edan no omu esi no omu de circulate social media no ebusunya mu ntie de atie omu ne se.
They made us understand that everything had been captured and ready for commissioning, but it's not true. After we saw the video circulating on social media, we went to the municipal assembly to check if everyone had been captured. Surprisingly, many names have disappeared from the book. So if they commission it right now, those whose names are not in the book will not be given accommodation, and the old structures will remain untouched. The residents say they will not allow any symbolic commissioning ceremony to overshadow the harsh reality they are facing. They are demanding a comprehensive resolution that will ensure that every displaced family has a home. Rama Smith, TV3 News, Western Region.
Well, let's know what you make of stories that have been aired so far. Just go into our social media platforms, particularly Facebook, we are live. Engage us with your comments and observations. And now let's do business. Financial analyst Dr. Richmond Frimpong says Bank of Ghana's minimum inflation forecast for 2024 is highly unattainable. In the January 2024 monetary policy report, the central bank forecast inflation to end 2024 between 13% to 17%. Dr. Frimpong, however, believes persistent supply-side inflationary pressures and potential election year risks will make this unlikely. Take a listen.
Inflation resumed the upward trajectory by going up to 23.5% in January 2024 after about 5 months of consistent decline. Bank of Ghana is, however, predicting inflation to end 2024 at a rate between 13% to 17%.
You juxtapose it against last year's benchmarks. We were looking at about 8% plus or minus 200 basis points. We ended the year with approximately about half or less than half of 54%. In fact, this year is even more critical in terms of it being not too achievable.
According to the central bank, the disinflation process is expected to continue, although geopolitical tensions and potential spillovers from the commodities markets are noted as major risks which could potentially undermine the disinflation process. A financial analyst, Dr. Richmond Frimpong, however, believes that the forecast, although realistic, may not be attainable.
Even though the 13 to 17% looks quite realistic, we are likely not to achieve it because of the present supply side inflationary pressures, and then also the election year fiscal side slippages that are likely to occur. If for nothing at all, and we are able to control that because the fund is in town under an IMF program, then I'm saying that we may achieve the upper end of the projection, which is the 17 plus or minus 200 basis points.
And now the flag bearer of the National Democratic Congress, NDC, aside his assurance of using not more than 60 ministers in his next administration, plans to change the name of the Agricultural Ministry to Agriculture and Agribusiness. On the second day of his Greater Accra regional tour, the former president argues that Ghana has the potential to become self-reliant despite its economic challenges. Here's Kumla Kluche's report.
The clergy was clear in their commendation to the NDC MPs who sponsored the private members' bill passed by Parliament a fortnight ago, with a legal suit challenging its legitimacy and some Bretton Woods institutions cautioning against the president signing it. John Mahama says Ghana would have been unperturbed.
If we were self-reliant, nobody would come and ask us to do this or to do that. And so one of the key economic policies we must pursue is one of self-reliance. And it's been done in this country before. For those of us who are old enough, we remember General Ike Achampon's time. Operation Feed Yourself, Operation Feed Your Industries. Self-reliance was the aim that that government was pursuing, so that we could be proud, dignified people because we're able to feed ourselves, so that tomorrow somebody won't come and tell us to do this or that.
The NDC flag bearer says agriculture remains a sport to growth, hence a structured redefining.
And so one of the new crop of young business people we're going to create are what I call agripreneurs, agribusiness people. We'll give them small machines so that they can process tomatoes, soya bean, they can mill rice and package it for the market. They can produce fruit juices for our shops so that we can produce more of the things we consume and cut down on the things that we import. And so the Ministry of Agriculture is going to be called the Ministry of Food and Agribusiness, because we want agribusiness to come out as a new area that we're going to invest in so that they can take the crops, uptake the crop from the farmers and be able to produce it into something else.
Moments thereafter, John Mahama proceeded to the Ghana Institute of Freight Forward. With a myriad of problems facing the sector, John Mahama has offered a leaf of hope.
We're going to license some finance companies, non-banking financial sector players. And if your container is coming, and you know you don't have money to clear it immediately, you go, you sign an agreement with them. They'll give you a short-term facility, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. And when your container comes, they'll pay for it. And they'll move it to a special location. Government will regulate the interest. And so the interest will be specified so that they don't become loan sharks.
His entourage then proceeded to assignment for a community engagement. Kamala Kluche, TV3 News, assignment.
Well, that's how we end the morning news. For more news updates, you'd want to log on to our website, it's 3news.com. Thanks for watching. It's always a pleasure coming your way. Have a productive day.